Hello. Farmer to Farmer, howdy. It's so great to be here. And it's great to be here in person and part of this climate panel of some really amazing speakers that are making up this panel today, and I'm really excited to be part of it. So thanks a lot. I am a soil scientist. I work for the Illinois Corn Growers Association, and I direct our water quality research. And what I really wanted to come and talk to you about today is what you're doing on your farms with conservation. Because regardless of where you are on your farms, what part of the conservation journey that you have taken your farm to, I would argue that the road ahead of you is a very long one. In fact, I'd say there's no end in sight for your individual farms and just for agriculture as a whole. In fact, I'd say there is no us to even expect that we are going to attain sustainability. Wow. It's my opinion, even find one single exclusive definition of sustainability. Not in my lifetime. Because I think it's too multifaceted. What climate issue, what water quality issue, what water quantity issue, what biodiversity issue, what endangered species issue are we going to address today? And how are we going to address it and with what practice? Is it going to be strip till or no till or cover crops or some end of pipe remediation? The dimensions are endless. And I think it's too complicated to come up with one singular definition of sustainability. But you know what I am pretty confident about? Single farmer in this room is going to be asked to demonstrate his or her sustainability to a greater degree every year for the next 10, 15, 20 years. Because if now you're a bit confounded, I think we're all on the same page. Welcome to the conservation age. This is it. And these, I believe, are the young people, the Gen Z and the Millennials, who are steering our ship for the next 20 to 30 years, the next 2 generations. Hopefully not the next 20 to 30 generations. They are in the prime of their lives right now. They're starting families. They're entering the workforce. No, they're not. They're not entering the workforce. Oops, sorry about that. We wish they would join the workforce. Hey, I'm not saying the workforce issues on millennials. I don't understand that legit issue. I do not, and someone else would fix it. But they are going to be driving our economy for the next years. And they're going to be defining the United States' place in the world order with their decisions, which are based on their perceptions and their values. And they are concerned about climate change and other issues. Families, I don't begrudge any. And they value transparency, and they demand sustainability. So I believe that we might serve ourselves well to be thinking about this group of people. And so here we are in this climate and ag session, and maybe you think that climate is the issue that we should be the most concerned about, and I do feel like it is very, very important. But you know what I would argue? If someone were to ask me what is going to be the most likely next thing to bring regulation to farmers, at least in the Midwest and the East Coast, I believe it's water quality. I believe we have the roadmap right here to show where we are going to move forward with water quality. It's been laid out. This is what it looks like in Illinois. It's the Illinois Nutrient Loss Strategy, released in July of 2015. 11 other states were directed by the US EPA to create their own state reduction strategies. And all of them had to have that same top line Show us for your state how you are going to reduce the nitrogen and phosphorus losses from your state by 45% by 2035. Every one of them had to have that component in their nutrient reduction strategy. Ours does, all of them do. What we determined through the course of a really detailed and well-done science assessment as we were developing our science strategy was that 80% of all of the nitrate nitrogen leaving the state of Illinois is coming from agricultural fields, and 48% of all the phosphorus that leaves our state is coming from agricultural fields. When this was being released, the Illinois corn growers decided we needed to do something sizable, like EPIC, to address these issues, because we knew, as goes Illinois, so goes the Midwest, as goes Ohio, as goes Iowa. We all stand or fall together. We didn't want that to come down on our heads. So we started doing some serious work. And the accumulation of all of that was that we developed a farmer service program called Precision Conservation Management. It was launched in 2015 with the help of a NRCS RCPP, Regional Conservation Partnership Program, award for $5.35 million. And it allowed us to move ahead with this program, start enrolling farmers in the Precision Conservation Management Program. And we now have about 500,000 acres. We have over 500 farmers in the state of Illinois. We have close to 60 farmers in Kentucky and about 70 farmers in Nebraska here. It's been a very successful program, but we started it with the purpose of understanding how these conservation practices are going to impact our farm net returns. We knew that was the missing link. Farmers need confidence that they're making a good business decision, and we just wanted to take all that emotion out of it and help you make good business decisions about how to adopt new practices and how to scale new practices across your farm in a financially responsible way. Our overall goal is to address water quality, and our big goal, long-term goal, is to eliminate additional agricultural regulations around water quality. This is a very strongly data-driven effort. Every one of the farmers who joins our program knows that when they join us, they are allowing their data to be used by us in an aggregated and anonymized way to help all the farmers across the Midwest to understand how conservation practices are impacting real farmers on their farms. And we also deliver a report to the individual farmer every single year. It's this team of folks that do it. This is the lifeblood of our program. These are our 9 precision conservation specialists. We have 7 in the state of Illinois, 1 in Kentucky, and 1 in Nebraska. And they sit down. They each build up in their own regions to 100 farmers. And they sit down with every one of their farmers several times a year. They collect data into the data platform that we have developed ourselves, which is encrypted and secured. And they show the farmer how they are doing their environmental assessments and their financial assessments next to each other, also next to how farmers who are using different practices, maybe more conservation-minded practices, how those farmers are doing, environmentally and financially. This is, again, the lifeblood of our program. Also, last year in 2021, the Illinois Soybean Association joined us to co-sponsor the Precision Conservation Management. So we are jointly administered by the 2 largest commodity associations in the state of Illinois now, Illinois Corn and Illinois Soybean. We also have great help from the Kentucky Corn Growers Association, and great help also from the Nebraska Corn Growers. Because we are jointly led by corn and soybean commodity associations, we focus on how to reduce nutrient losses from cornfields and from soybean fields. And for corn, we believe that the greatest benefit, the greatest impact that we can make for reducing nutrient losses, obvious, nutrient management. Just getting especially your nitrogen, but your nitrogen and your phosphorus fertilizer rates right. and applying more of your nitrogen fertilizer in season, not in the fall when you have 5 months to lose it. We also strongly promote cover crops. For soybean fields, minimizing tillage, especially of soybean residue. We don't understand why we are seeing more tillage of soybean residue in the past 2 years than we saw 10 years ago. So that is something else that we really think that by minimizing tillage of soybean residue, we can really stop some of that mineralization that releases nitrate nitrogen to be lost to our tile lines before our crop is there to pick it up and use it. And again, cover crops. So these are the systems that we promote most heavily in the Precision Conservation Management Program. And then taking a look here at some of our nitrogen data, what you're looking at here is all of the nitrogen application data ahead of corn on our high SPR, that soil productivity rating, so our highest productivity fields in the state of Illinois. You can see the rates on the bottom axis there in bushels per acre, from less than 150 pounds of nitrogen to more than 225 pounds of nitrogen. And you can see the correlating yields in bushels per acre on the vertical axis. So every one of those different colored bars, the shaded bars there, are showing the average on those soils for corn in those individual years. And the blue bar that runs across them, that is the average for all years for that nitrogen rate range. What do you know? Adding more nitrogen does increase yields. What else do you know? You also know that just like with any agricultural input, there's diminishing returns. And there is a point at which an extra pound of nitrogen no longer pays for itself in terms of the value of the corn you're producing. Where is that? Every year. Doesn't matter what the nitrogen price is, really. Doesn't matter much what the corn price is because they change together. Every year, that inflection point is somewhere just over 200 pounds of nitrogen per acre in the state of Illinois where we're working in our regions. 200 pounds. Every year, the most profitable nitrogen range is between 150 and 200 pounds of nitrogen. And yet, 70% of the fields in the state of Illinois apply more nitrogen than the profitable range. We could hardly believe this when we saw it, even though we all knew what we were applying on our own fields, and we actually did know it was more than 200. Let me also tell you, that range is the total nitrogen. It includes the nitrogen in your MAP, your DAP, anything you're putting down with your herbicide, anything you're putting down at planting. The University of Illinois has been telling us for years that this was the right range. And it doesn't matter whether you're talking about northern, central, or southern Illinois, whether you're talking about corn ahead of corn or corn ahead of soybean. That was the range that they've been telling us was the most profitable using the maximum return to nitrogen calculator, which is an economic model. So our take-homes for our nitrogen from PCM, the university recommended nitrogen range, the maximum return to nitrogen in Illinois, is consistently the most profitable rate, and yet 70% of the PCM fields are applying above that. If you want to know what that is in terms of nitrogen use efficiency as a pounds of nitrogen per bushel of corn, it's in that 0.75 to 1 bushel per pounds of nitrogen per bushel of corn. Quickly, and I will apologize, I'm just going to have to go through these quickly, but I do have to say something about cover crops. First of all, our cover crop users are our conservation superstars. They are number one, using reduced tillage. 90% of our farmers who grow cover crop are using some form of reduced tillage. Almost 80% of those same farmers who grow a cover crop ahead of corn are putting the majority of their nitrogen on in season. And then lastly, the most strongly correlated factor with which farmers are also using the university recommended nitrogen rate, farmers who use cover crops. They are truly our conservation superstars. Also, when farmers are using cover crops, they usually continue to use cover crops. When we look in our fields and we look at cover crops, we see that our farmers are continuing to use them 70% of the time ahead of corn and 75% of the time ahead of soybean. And so I just want to say they are really doing the best job. However, there is a problem with profitability. And I'm just going to go over the corn version of this, but I do want to show you that farmers are taking a 6 to 7 bushel per acre yield hit when they grow cover crops ahead of corn. And they're also generally having a little bit higher total non-land cost to pay for the seed and to terminate that cover crop. So these numbers are not meant to be the best case scenario. However, what they are showing, and they also do not include any cost share assistance that farmers got from government or public sources. So I also want to say, though, that these are not farmers who have been using cover crops for a very long time. So we know that the farmers who have been doing it for a long time can do it more profitably than what we're seeing here. And it's essentially the same values for cover crops ahead of corn and for soybean. So how much cover crop does it really take? I'm just going to jump right straight ahead here. It takes about half a ton per acre of cover crop, and that's not that much. It's 6 to 7 inches of cereal rye. And the same for annual ryegrass. That's enough to statistically lower the nitrate nitrogen losses from your cornfields and your soybean fields. Truly, cover crops are the key to reducing nutrient losses. However, they do pose some financial risks. But we do think that these ecosystem service markets or regenerative ag markets or the policy innovations coming out of the federal government right now are offering farmers opportunities. So with that, I just want to say thank you so much for your time. And I also have some documents up here. If anyone would like a more in-depth deep dive on some of our PCM data from the state of Illinois, be happy to provide that.